Hello, this is Carson Winter, and today I will be going over the 2023 Invitational A Mathematics test, going through all 60 questions and explaining how to solve each of them. Let's begin. Number one, on his birthday, Darius received $250, purchased running shoes, Nike shirt, and running shorts and socks. With a tax rate of 8.25%, how much is left? Well, it's quite simple. You add up all of these values right here. Since there's a tax rate of 8.25%, you multiply it by 1.0825% or times. And then you have to subtract, that's the amount you spend. So you subtract that amount from your 250 gift card to get $40.27 left. Number two, line AB with these 2 points. If the line 1B lies on AB, then B is equal to. First off, you can edit and use a linear regression. So put 8 and -6 into L1 on stat edit, and then these two values into L2, then go to calculate linear regression and store the regression in Y1. Then you can do Y1 of 6. Alternatively, you could just realize that 1B is the midpoint of these two sections, so -10 plus 6 all over 2 is -2. 3. Che has nickels, dimes, and quarters. The jar is total of 264 coins with the value of that. 20 more quarters and nickels. How many dimes are there? Well, this is going to be a 3-variable linked equations. So to do that, you'll go to matrix and put the representative of the variables in the matrix. So one nickel, the total 1 times the amount of nickels, 1 times the amount of dimes, and 1 times the amount of quarters totals 264 coins. 0.05 times the nickels, zero point 0.1 times the dimes, and 0.25 times the quarters gets you a total value of 37.2. And since there are 20 more quarters and nickels, 1 quarter is equal to 20 plus 1 quarter, or 1 nickel, and this nickel would go over on this side of the equation logically. These are kind of x plus y plus z equals this. So if you do that, you then go to matrix, math, and then RF, and you will search for the value assigned to dimes, which in this case is the middle one right here, and you should get 88. 4, which of the following values is not in this solution set? Well, simply subtract 7 from everything, and you'll get a very easy to see range right here. -4 less than or equal to x, and less than 5, and as you can see, 5 is not in that solution set. C, or 5, Samuel is solving the quadratic equation by completing a square. Second step is x squared plus 10x plus c equals 6 plus c. The value c is, well, completing the square makes you divide this value by 2 and then square it and add it to both sides. So in that case, 10 over 2 squared is equal to 25. Number 6 and number 8, we'll talk about them together because they are both solved using the same way. We'll put all the chords into stat-ed, so all the x values into L1, so -6, -2, and 6. Then all the y values into L2, so -4, 8, and -8. Then once you have that, go to your shoelace program. It's in Polygon, 3 sides, and then shoelace. And it will get you both the perimeter of 43.2 and the area of 80.0. Number 7 is a bit harder. The coordinates of the, well, not really, but it's something else. The coordinates of the midpoint of BC are these right here. Well, the midpoint of the x value of the midpoint is equal to the average of these two x values, so -2 plus 6 over 2. Or my apologies, I wrote that wrong. Wait, did I? Okay, no, I did. Oh, wait. Okay, BC. Midpoint of BC. Well, I think I wrote this equation for the wrong thing, but basically add these two x values together. Take the average, that's your average x value. Then add the y values together, take that average. So you get an x value of 0 and a y value of 0, or x value of 2, y value of 0 at this point right here, which adds up to 2.0. Number 9, point D shown lies on AC such that BD bisects ABC. DC is equal to, okay, how this works is that the amount of this line AC that is on either side is based on the length of, for example, D is here, the length of DC would be equal to the length of BC over the combined length of AB and BC, and you have to multiply by your length of AC. So that's what we're doing here to find the actual length of DC. So first off, you do the length of BC over the combined length of AB and BC, and then you multiply it by the length of AC right here to get 7.4. So this side over the length of this side over this total of these two sides, and then multiplied by the length equals your proportion, so you multiply by AC to get the length of CD. Okay, number 10. 4 times the complement of A is 36 greater than the supplement of A. Well, you just write that out. The complement of a angle is 90 minus that angle, and the supplement is 180 minus that angle. So just put that into EQ solver, and you will get an angle of 48. Complement, 4 times the complement is equal to supplement plus 36. 11, okay, the pyramid is a square with side section 14 centimeters and height of 10 centimeters. What's the volume of the pyramid? Well, the volume of the pyramid is the base area, which is a square, so 14 squared, times the height all over 3. So if you do that, you get 653 centimeters. The total surface area of the pyramid, well, the surface area of a pyramid has two parts, the square base at the bottom, which we do 14 squared, and then also the four triangles on the sides of the pyramid. So in that case, you need to figure out the height of that triangle. So you use Pythagorean theorem because you have a height of 10, and in this case, your length is going to be, since this is in the middle of the square, your length is half of the side lengths. So 10 squared plus 7 squared equals your height of the slanted triangles that we're talking about. So that's where this comes from. And then you multiply it by your base, 14, divide by 2 because it's a triangle, and multiply by 4 again because there are 4 triangles. Okay, that is 12. If you do that, you get 538. 13. The volume of a cone is 768 pi centimeters, and the height is 12 centimeters. What is the diameter of the base? Well, the volume of a cone is radius squared times pi times height over 3. So the radius is going to be the diameter over 2. Squared times pi times 12 over 3 is equal to that. Put that in EQ solver, and you'll get 27.7 centimeters. It's 14. Oh, by the way, if you don't know what EQ solver is, go to Math, scroll up, and you'll find numeric solver, and then you can put in your equation in there, and it will get you the answer. Okay, the hypotenuse of a isosceles right triangle is that much. What is the area? Well, of an isosceles right triangle, the base is base multiplied by square root of 2 gets the hypotenuse, because both of the angles are 45 degrees, so you simply divide by that square root of 2 to get the length of one side, and then you square it and divide by 2 because it's a triangle, or it's an isosceles triangle with a right angle. And then if you do that, you get 144.5. Okay, Jen can mow 3 yards in 8 hours. Tom can mow 5 yards in 16 hours. If they work together, how long would it take them to mow 12 yards? I'll change this equation to something that's easier to explain. I'll simply multiply each side by x and then explain it from there. Because you need to think of these things and these times in terms of rates. So if Jen completes 3 yards in 8 hours, her rate is 3 yards per 3/8 yards per hour. The similar is with Tom. Tom is 5 over 16 yards per hour. And then that is multiplied by some amount of time in order to complete 12 yards right here. If you do that, you'll get a value of like 17.45, which is 17 hours and 27 minutes. Find a number that is 5/12 of the way from there to there. Well, first off, figure out the distance between those two values. So I actually didn't write the equation, my bad. But you would add 8 plus 1/2, and then you subtract your negative value. So -3 minus 1 over 3. And then that is going to be your length. And then you simply multiply that by your distance. So 5 over 12 times that full distance. And then you add it from your lowest one, -3 minus 1 over 3. So if you do all that, you'll get a number that is this distance from -3 and -1/3, and you will get 115 over 72. If it gives you a decimal instead, go to math and then click on number to fraction, and it will convert that number to a fraction, as seen here. 17, if f of x is x squared, then what is this? Well, simply write, or in f of x plus h, simply replace x with x plus h. So if you do that, that will expand out to this thing, and then you subtract x squared from that again, and then you have to divide by h, and if you simplify all that, you'll get b, 2x plus h. 18, Dad's age is 2 more than 3 times Abe's age, and Dad's age is 8 more than twice Connie's age. Connie is 6 years older than Abe. What is the sum of their ages? Okay, so we can simply write out the equations here, basically. Dad is equal to 3 times Abe's age plus 2. This A has to be on this side, so it's the same as D minus 3A is equal to 2. And then that's where we're going to do the three variable matrix again. So 1, -3. Connie's age is not relevant to that specific equation, and it's 2, difference of 2. And then you do the same thing for Dad's age is 8 more than Connie's age. D is equal to 2C plus 8. Move the 2 over. 1, 0, -2, 8. And then you do the same thing for Connie and Abe. Connie right here is equal to Abe plus 6 years. So that's where -1 and 6 come from. And once you do that, go to matrix, ref, and then you'll get a value of 98 if you add up all three of the variable results. 19, find a number of distinct diagonals that can be drawn from the vertices of a regular decagon. Well, a decagon is 10 sides, and the number of diagonals on a polygon is the number of sides times 3 less than the number of sides, all over 2. So as you can see, that equation is right here, and you get 35. Consider triangle ABC with point D on AB such that BC is perpendicular to AC. If ABC is equal to 90 degrees, AD is equal to 10, and DC is equal to 12.9, then what is BD? Well, here's an interesting property about BD. I can't explain why it works, but it does work. BD, in this case, is equal to the geometric mean of AD and DC. So in other words, you multiply those two sides together and square root it, and you get a length of 14.4. And C. Find the domain of the function f of x is equal to this thing. Well, for square roots always have to be positive or have a positive inside if you want a real answer. So x squared has to be greater than this counteract of 25, which essentially means the absolute value of x has to be greater than or equal to 5. And then also the bottom of the equation cannot be 0. So the absolute value of x minus 6 cannot be 0. So x cannot be equal to 6. And then you simply use the equation that marks all those properties, which is here. Like the domain is any value less than or equal to -5, then greater than or equal to or greater than or equal to 5, but less than 6, and then anything 6 onwards, it's fine as well. 22. How many distinct permutations can be made with the word Massachusetts? Okay, first off, permutations. If all of the letters were completely unique, then the number of permutations would be equal to the number of letters factorial, because the first letter can be 13 possibilities, and the second one can be 12, 11, 10, so on. So Massachusetts, if you add it out, has 13 letters in it. However, there are some repeats. For any repeat, you have to divide by the number of letters that are being repeated factorial, because any one of these S's, for example, could show up when an S is needed. So what you do is essentially your 13 letters factorial, divide by 2 factorial the number of A's, divide by 4 factorial the number of S's, and divide by 2 factorial because you have 2 T's right here. And if you do that, you get a value of 64 million, yada, 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 right there. Okay, consider this circle. The area of this circle is, well, in this case, the x squared minus 8x can be simplified to x minus 4 all squared. And if you do that, you have to add 16 to this side of the equation because 4 squared is 16. So if you do that, then that means you add 16 to this 8 that's also coming over, and then you do the same thing for y, add 25. So essentially your r, in this value over here will be representing your r squared, because that's how circles work. So r squared is equal to this 8 plus this 8 over 2 squared plus this 10 over 2 squared. And then you simply multiply your r squared by pi, gets a circle, and get 154. 24. First off, what I would do in this situation is I wouldn't bother doing any math. I just put this into y1 and figure out what equation that represents. But if you do want to do the math, then tangent of pi over 2 minus x is the same as cotangent. And then you can change these values to their polar equivalents right here. So opposite over hypotenuse times adjacent over opposite. Simplify it out. You get x over r, which is this definition of cosine. And so the answer is simply cosine of x. 25, consider a geometric series in which the first term is this and the fifth term is this. What is the seventh term? It's another one I guess I missed writing the explanation for. But essentially, you need to figure out what the 0th term is. So what you need to do is after 4, the ratio powered to 4 causes this number to become this number. What you do is you do 4 plus 4 over 9 divided by your original value, and you get your ratio that was happening when your ratio was powered to 4. So you simply take the 4th root of both of these, and then you have your ratio. And then you simply find the 0th term by multiplying this number by r powered to -1. And then once you have that, you multiply that 0th term by r powered to 7 to get to the 7th term, convert it to a fraction, and you'll get 160 over 81. Find the eccentricity of this ellipse right here. Well, interestingly, since they're asking for the eccentricity, these values over here don't matter at all. Only thing that matters are these two values. So essentially, what you can kind of imagine it as is, what would make the most sense to explain? It's a bit hard, but basically, what you're doing is you're doing you can imagine your ellipse like this, or something like that. Horrible drawing, I know, but basically, if this is the radius, your eccentricity is the longer axis squared minus the shorter axis squared. Take the square root of that value and divide it by the longer axis. So essentially what happens is that this 25 here represents, really it's like 1 over 25. So like 1 over 16 minus 1 over 25 or over 1 over 16. But you can essentially just flip these values because you're powering to -1, just an interesting property. But yeah, you can essentially just do 25 minus 16 because these are both the length axis is squared in a way. And then you divide it by the longer axis. And if you do that, you get an eccentricity of 0.6. Bit hard to explain, I'm sorry, but essentially these two values are the things that matter. Longer axis, this can be imagined as the longer axis squared. This can be imagined as shorter axis, even though they're actually the opposite and they're flipped. You can imagine it that way because of how inverses work, and then divide by the longer axis. 27, the pressure of an ideal gas varies directly with the temperature and inversely with the volume. So that means that K over the volume is what the relationship is, and K times the temperature is what the relationship is. So you have this K times temperature and divided by the volume, as I kind of said. So the inverse means that you're dividing by it, and the directly related means you're multiplying by it. And that results in a pressure of 2, so you figure out this K value right here. And then you put it back into the equation with your new values to find a pressure of 10.0. Value of your expensive vehicle depreciates. I originally paid this much. After that time, it had fallen to this value. If it continues to deprecate exponentially, what is the expected value on 2030? Well, you can essentially imagine that this is your ratio that's being powered by because it's an exponential decrease. So after 3 years, it decreases by that amount powered to 1. So you simply model that. For example, 2025 minus 2022 would get you 3. So you have this divide by 3 here. And then you multiply by the original value. And then because we have more years than just 3, you do 2030 instead of 2025 because that's the amount of years. And then you subtract from your original year it started at to find out the change in years that you will be powering by. And if you do that, you'll get $45,876.2. 29, the baseball diamond at SHS, home plate and 3 bases are located on vertices of a square with side length of 90 feet. Pitcher mound lies on a straight line from home plate to second base and is located 60.5 feet from the home plate. How far it is from the pitcher mound to first base? Well, in this case, you can use our SAS program under triangle. You have one side over here, which is 90. Then you have your 60.5 side from to the pitcher's mound. And then since the pitcher's mound is in the middle of this 90-degree angle, this angle right here is 45 degrees. Once you do that, you'll get a side of 63.7. 30, at the Molten Fall Festival, cash prizes are awarded for top 20 places in the Peach Pie contest. First place received $500, second $475, third, and yada yada yada, so on. So there are a couple of ways you can think out of it. I'm going to do the actual algebra way. If you imagine a series that starts at 1 and does 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, etc., all the way to plus 10, and that value will be the highest value, 10, times 1 plus that value, 11 over 2. So sum of the series numbers from 1 to 10 would be 55. So you're kind of imagining you're doing that, except you have 20 values, 1 to 20, and all of them are being multiplied by 25. That's essentially what's happening in this problem. So you divide each of them by 25 because the series is 20 long, and then 20 times 21 over 2. Then you have to multiply back the $25 because you multiplied the entire series from 1 to 20 by 25. And if you do that, you'll get a dollar amount of 5250. 6 couples plan to attend a concert and sit in the same row. Each row has 12 seats. If the two members of each couple are to sit together, how many seating arrangements are possible? Well, let's imagine the number of ways the 6 couples could sit. They are sitting in a row, so order does indeed matter. So in this case, there could be 6 couples comprising the first one, 5 the second one, 4 the third, etc. All the way, so that results in 7 factorial. 7 times 5 times 4 times 3, etc. And then for each of those couples, the husband or wife or whoever, each person can sit either on the left or the right. So for each, there are 2 possible ways a couple can sit. So you multiply by 2 power to your 6 couples. And if you do that, you get 46,080. Okay, the point -7b lies on the curve defined by this parametric equation. Well, you're given the x value, simply find t. -7 is equal to t minus 5, t is equal to -2. Then you put that t value right into y, and you get y is equal to 4. 33, convert the rectangular equation to polar form. Personally, when there are problems like this that look like they could take a while, I just like to map this equation into y1, and then map these r equations and figure out what equations are the same. If you do that, it turns out the answer is B. But you can also prove it algebraically. In this case, you divide each side by r, and then you change it to their polar equivalents. Cosine is x over r, sine is y over r. So 2 cosine of theta minus 3 sine of theta is equal to 5 over r. Then you multiply up both sides by r, and then divide by this humongous thing to get r is equal to 5 over all of this, which is B. 34, find the perimeter of the triangle with the side lengths. Well, excuse me. This we can use our 3D shoelace program. Put each of the x values into L1, 4, 3, -5, the y values in L2, and the z values in L3. Then go to polygon. There are 3 sides. And click on 3D shoelace, and it will get you a perimeter of 43.4. 35. 3 of the zeros of this are that, and that was f of 2. Well, essentially, what this means is that this value is based on the product of all the roots. And if this was odd, you would have to make it negative because the values that are being multiplied are -1 times the root, basically, because the equation is 1 minus each 0. But since this is x power to 4, we can just say that we're dividing 12 by all the roots. Divide them all, you'll get the 4th root. And then you simply multiply, you do it in terms of those, you write the equation in terms of those roots. So 2, which is your value of f of 2, minus each of the zeros, multiply them all together, and you get E as 8. 36. Consider the graph of f of x is equal to 3 minus 2 cotangent of all this stuff. What is the period of this graph? Well, the period of a normal cotangent graph is equal to pi, and that value has to be divided by this coefficient on the x, because that's how, because if this number was larger, it would take less of a change in x to repeat itself. So you do pi, your period of pi, divided by the value over here. And if you do that, you'll get a very clean 3 over 4. 37, assume that the Earth rotates its axis that much. Find the linear speed of a person sitting on a chair. Well, in this case, speed is distance over time. Your distance is the diameter or the circumference of the Earth at the equator. So that's simply radius times 2 pi. And then you divide by the amount of time it took. 36 hours, 56 over 60 hours, minutes convert to hours, and then seconds convert to hours. And then if you do that, you'll get 1,039.6 miles per hour. 38, pretty simple. Just put it into go to polar. If you don't know how to do that, go to mode. function turned to polar, and then put in that equation right there. If you do that, you can map out the number of petals, and you'll see that there are 16 petals in the equation. 39, on this time, Lily places this amount of dollars into account A, earning this interest compounded semi-annually. And then 14.5 in account B, earning that much compounded monthly. And what is the earliest date which the balance of account B exceeds the balance of account A? So essentially, when are they equal, basically? Because once they're equal, the other one will exceed the new one. So you simply put the equation for growth in for both of these rates. 1,500 times your original amount. 1 plus your rate divided by the amount of times you compound it, and then powering to the number of times you compound it by the time. Do the same thing for this equation over here. You're compounding it 12 times a year, so do that. And then you will get the number of years, and you'll get something like 5.7, which mark 5.7 years, which is September the 10th, 2025. If you add that many years to January 1st, 2020. 40, the foci of the hyperbola shown has that coordinate. Well, first off, let's write the equation of the hyperbola. We can assign the right side to be 1, and in that case, the x squared value needed to make a point with no y contribution is 6 squared. So you have to divide by 36 to get a value that would be equal to 1. Then you also have to plug in your new x value and your y value to figure out what you have to divide y by to equal to 1. And since it's hyperbola, you're subtracting y. Then if you do that, you'll get these values right here. X squared over 36 minus y squared over 9 is equal to 1. And these essentially are equal to your how should I put it, your kind of axis is squared. So for a hyperbola, the focus is the square root of the sum of these axes in a way. So square root of 36 plus 9. 41, the area bounded by the graph of the right branch and the line x equals 10. In this case, you'll want to write the equation. You'll want to write the equation in terms of y equals. Now this will mark the equation that looks like this, like as you can see here. Not entirely what we're looking for. So so what I did personally is had the second equation be y equals to 0. Then I used our OXOR program with the lower bound of 6, higher bound of x equals 10 to figure out this area right here. And since these two are identical, you have to multiply it by 2, and you'll get the entire area of this segment right here of 20.2. 42, a 50-foot ladder is leaning against the building. The base of the ladder is being pulled away at that rate. Top of the ladder will move down the wall at that rate when the base is 14 feet from the building. So the equation is pretty simple. It's Pythagorean theorem. The x squared, or the length squared, plus the width squared is equal to the ladder squared, which always remains at 50 feet. So you take the derivative of that with respect to t. So the derivative of x squared times dx over dt, and the derivative of y squared times dy over dt. Then you have all the values except dy dt, because 2 times your x, you're given that x is 14 right now, times your speed that's moving, so 4 feet per second. And then your y value has to counteract that. The derivative of 50 squared is just going to be 0. So these two have to be opposite of each other. So you have 2 times your y value. Well, your y value, use Pythagorean theorem, 50 squared minus 14 squared. Find out your height, and then that you have to multiply it by your unknown change in y per time, or per second. And if you do that, you will get a value of 7 over 6 for dy over dt. 43, consider this graph right here. how many values of x exist in that interval where there's a horizontal tangent. Well, put this into y1 and look on the interval 6, 10 for whenever the slope is 0. And if you do that, you'll count 3 instances in which that occurs. 44, find the average value of this equation on this interval. Well, average value is equal to the integral of the equation from your two bounds divided by the length of your bound. So the integral from 6 to 8 of this equation right here. And then you divide it by 2 because your interval has a length of 2. If you do that, you'll get a value of 4.3. Okay, let f of x be a solution to this equation. Use Euler's method to approximate y5. We have a Euler's approximation program for it. Put this equation x over 2 over y into y1, and then use our approximation method, Euler's, with two step size starting at x equals 4. It's given that f of 4 is 3, and then you are ending at x equals 5. If you do that, you'll get 3.6708. 46, find the exact value of that equation. Well, we could actually solve it, or we could use the same approximation method, but just have 500 steps. So the error is basically 0. So, and if you do that, your calculator within like around 5 to 10 seconds should spit out 3.6742. 47, find the area bounded by these two equations. Well, put it into y1, put it into y2, use our OXOR program. You don't need inputs, thankfully, because you're looking for the area that are bounded by their intersections. And then your line of revolution is revolved around the x-axis, so your line is 0, or y is equal to 0. So that program should give you the area under a curve of 18.0 and the volume of revolution of y is equal to 0, which is 362. The x-axis is the same thing as the equation y is equal to 0. Don't do x equals 0. That is not correct. 49, p of 3 is the third-degree Maclaurin polynomial. F of 0.5 minus the third-degree polynomial of 0.5. Well, Maclaurin polynomials are equal to, this is your original value you're subtracting by e power to 0.5 minus your equation with x equals 0, then your equation with x is equal, then the derivative of your equation with x equals 0. The derivative of e of x is always e of x, so that never changes. So 1 times 0.5 times your x over 1 factorial, which doesn't affect anything. Then your second derivative times your x squared over 2 factorial. Your third derivative times your x cubed over 3 factorial. And if you do that, you'll get a value of e. 50, the position of a particle is given by these two. Find the velocity vector. Well, the velocity of the positions is simply the change in those positions, so the derivative. So take the derivative of both of these equations, as shown here. Ln is 1 over the equation times the derivative of this inside equation, as shown here. And if you do that and plug in t correctly, you will get e. 51, the second derivative is given by this. Where does it have a point of inflection? Well, point of inflection in the second derivative is given by when that value is equal to 0. However, it must go from positive to negative or negative to positive, which means that the exponent here must be odd. If it was even, the graph of h of x would look like this, and that is not a point of inflection because it goes from positive to positive still. So the values that do that are x equals 2 and x equals 8 here. So the answer is B. 52, piecewise function, find the value of integral from 0 to 10 of f prime of x. Well, this integral cancels out this derivative. So now you simply have f of 10 minus f of 0, which is 6.00. Okay, Phoenix enters the iron country bowling marathon last week. Each contestant is required to bowl 9 games, 6 hours. Table showed the result. Go to Stat Edit, put all these values into L1, and then do one variable stats. Difference between mean and median, well, that's the X bar value minus med if you scroll down. And the interquartile range is the third quadrant minus the first quadrant. And that tells you how to do that. Lissa flips a fair coin 6 times, comes up head all 6, decides to flip a coin again. What's the probability that the 7th flip will produce a tail? Well, previous flips do not have any impact on the next flip. Each one is independent. So it is simply your normal coin flip of 0.50. Okay, 2056. Christopher is warming up by taking number sense test. This is the amount of time he took. So this is the score he gets. This is going to be a linear regression problem. Stat edit this stuff into L1, this stuff into L2. Sort, go to calculate linear regression, store the thing in Y1, and you will get an R value of negative 0.9967. If it doesn't show an R value, you need to go to mode on your calculator and then press on to stat diagnostics. And if you do that, you'll get this R value right here. Then predict the score if you took 9.66 minutes. Well, simply use that line you stored in Y1 and predict how long or what a score would be after 9.66 minutes. And you get 182. Find the value of the residual for this point. Well, residual is actual minus your estimate. So as you can see here, that value is going to be 2.1 if you put that in your calculator. Then 59. Researchers testing claims 62% of Americans believe the economy is the most important issue. 782 out of 1,200 did do that, and they want to perform an appropriate test. Well, this is a probability test. There is one probability being tested, so it is a one prop z test. Therefore, go to stat, go over the test, one prop z test, and put in your probability 0.62, your x value, which is 782, and your total number, which is 1,200, and then probability that it is not equal to p. And if you do that, you'll get a value of 2.26 as your test statistic or your z value. And you will reject H0 because your probability is 0.02, like 38. And you reject P if it's less than your 0.05 that you have significance level here. Okay, that's the entire test. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave something in the comment and I'll try to answer them. See you later.